Books bring us joy.
Now, for the most part, I don't like books. When I had to do my reading logs, I lied about the books I read because I hated reading so much. But Scholastic book fairs didn't just have any books. They had books catered specifically to your taste. They had all the books that your parents don't want you to read.
Books bring us adventure.
The good old Scholastic book fair is not what it should be.
Scholastic book fairs are essentially a public display of disposable income.
Books bring us discovery.
Did you know the Scholastic Book Fair just made a button to get rid of all the books with black characters?
Books bring us together.
The book ban plague that has been spreading across America, almost entirely aimed at LGBTQ+ authors, is now getting so severe it's affecting the likes of Scholastic.
Guess what day it is today? It is Book Fair Day. It is everyone's favorite day of the school year. As long as your parents had money and wanted to give it to you, it is Book Fair Day. And now that my boss babe daughter, Braylon Emily, is in school, she's going to be going to the book fair as well. Welcome to Big Box Book Fair, run by the privately owned Big Box Bookstore, but coming to you today in your publicly funded school, meaning that government and private funds have already mixed and there's nothing we can do about it. Today, you'll have 20 minutes to go shopping for new books using only the cash that your parents gave you. Ready, set, go! I'm wondering if there are any books about World War II. I'd love to learn more about my family's history. As a Jewish girl whose family immigrated to the US in the early 20th century, I agree. No books on that war. It is the official position of Big Box Bookstore that World War II is inappropriate for kids. But what about the kids who lived through it? No, not appropriate. Instead, if you are interested in wars and conflict, how about you get this BB-8 toy from our Star Wars brand partner? But that's not even a book. My cousin's Big Box Book Fair had the book Heartstopper. I've been wanting to read it because it looks so cute. No, it is the position of Big Box Bookstore that in this particular county and US state, that book is inappropriate. But my cousin is younger than me and it's not inappropriate at her school. It is the official position of Big Box Bookstore that what's inappropriate for children varies by state. But my mom read me that book. It doesn't have anything in it that you wouldn't see on the Disney Channel. It is the official position of Big Box Bookstore that in some states, same-gender relationships are political by nature, even if in other states they are profitable to sell in the media that we publish. Now how about instead, I can offer you this Mega Bloks set. That's not even a book. You don't even have real Legos? If you're one of my viewers from the good old United States of America, you're probably familiar with a book publisher called Scholastic. Scholastic is responsible for publishing the majority of the books that made our childhoods, especially if you grew up in the 1980s or 1990s. Scholastic's publication of Goosebumps is likely responsible for your current unhealthy obsession with scary shit to the point of making true crime girly your entire personality. Scholastic's publication of The Magic School Bus was probably the cause of your lesbian or bisexual awakening when you saw Miss Frizzle just existing in all of her quirky, queer-coded glory. And if Scholastic's publication of The Babysitter's Club didn't make you realize you were a lesbian, then it definitely made you realize you were a boss babe, because lesbian and boss babe are the only two genders in the Babysitter's Club universe, and if you were a Christie, you were lucky enough to get to be both. Scholastic is also responsible for stoking the flames of elementary school class warfare with the yearly Scholastic Book Fair, which came to schools and set up their wares in the school library. Now, instead of borrowing books from your school library for free, you could pay for the books with money, assuming that your mom wanted to give you the money, or had the money to give you, or was back from her trip of buying cigarettes out at the corner store. My point is, Scholastic book fairs have been controversial for a long time, but just recently, in the gorgeous basic bitch season of autumn, in the year of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ 2023, the Scholastic book fair levels of controversy have gone from Jessica's mom let her pay the $4.95 fee to join the Mary-Kate and Ashley fan club that was on the Scholastic book fair order catalog catalog for some reason, and that's why Jessica's popular and why people make fun of me for taking the ugly white bus to the after-school daycare while my mom works her third shift. And they've instead ascended to levels of controversy like books about black people or gay people are inherently political, and if you live in Florida and want to opt out of all of those books about political people at once, Scholastic's got your back. It's gone from, yes, Susie, buying a bag of silly bands the size of Poseidon's ball sack does in fact count as a book, assuming you're willing to pay cash for that too. There are two genders, male and political, two races, white and political, two sexual orientations, straight and political, and if you're political, your school can opt out of you. It's gone from Ben Shapiro's special interest in Milton Friedman to Ben Shapiro's friend Matt Walsh's malicious interest in preserving the white majority. It's gone from a frat boy's 2011 mating call of fiscally conservative, socially liberal to the 2023 boomers mating call of Make America Great Again. Basically, what's happened is Scholastic has decided to take all books deemed diverse, basically the if you're not a straight white man, you're on thin ice bucko category, and put them into a collection called Share Every Story, Celebrate Every Voice. Now, about an hour before I started filming this video, Scholastic released a new statement potentially walking back this decision, so we're going to take a look at that as well, but I want to go through the entire situation in depth here. While that slogan, share every story, celebrate every voice, does sound like a nice sentiment, it's also literal segregation. The books were all put into one category, meaning that if you teach somewhere like Florida or Texas or any of the states that count Dennis Prager's half-assed conservative propaganda as legitimate public school standard materials according to state educational standards,
the left is leading the first widespread suppression of free speech in modern American history.
Then you can just say, actually, Scholastic, when y'all come to my school, just don't bother including the Share Every Story, Celebrate Every Voice collection, and then you can have all your books about straight white boys worshiping capitalism every Sunday morning and not bother with everything else. Yes, there is a lot to unpack about this situation, which is why today we are doing a deep dive on Scholastic. Let's go.
Get you some nuts.
Yeah, you effing.
Up yours, woke moralist. We'll see who cancels who.
Hey, what's up, my fellow small business supporters? I'm Savvy. Welcome back to Savvy Writes Books, the channel where we talk about books and business, where today we are going to be talking about a business that produces books, Scholastic. But if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I'd like to give a quick shout out to my Patreon supporters who have supported this channel all along. Patreon supporters' names are up on the screen, and you can check out my links in the description below, where you can join my Patreon to get behind the scenes blog posts and live streams and things like that. And in addition, don't forget to take a look at my Patreon supporters links in my description below, because $5 a month and up Patreon tier members get to promote their own links in my description as well. One other quick thing, because this video has no sponsor, look at my dress. Isn't that cute? I'm really proud of this one. I did the art for it. It is going to be available next week on my merch site, hipsterunicorn.myshopify.com, where you can find all kinds of colorful merch, especially colorful shoes that I've designed. Oh, look at these. These are a new pair that's coming out too. They have the cool S on them. If you were a Scholastic Book Fair kid, you were also a cool S drawing in the notebook kid. You're gonna love these. All right, that's enough merch promotion. I'm done being a boss babe. Time to talk about everything else. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive on what my millennial viewers from the US probably consider either the fondest memories of their childhood or their greatest source of childhood trauma, the Scholastic Book Fair. What is the Scholastic Book Fair? Scholastic is a publishing company that began in 1920 as a magazine publisher for news in Pennsylvania. In 1926, now nearly a century ago, Scholastic published its first book, which was an anthology of award-winning literature called Saplings. Scholastic then continued publishing books, ultimately carving its niche in a staple of children's book publishing, creating iconic characters like Clifford the Big Red Dog, whom Scholastic helped artist Norman Birdwell bring to life in its original 1963 publication. In 1981, just a few years before Scholastic would release two of its other most profitable series, The Magic School Bus and The Babysitter's Club, Scholastic began its other most famous tradition, the School Book Fair. According to Scholastic's website, in 1981, Scholastic launched its in-school book fair business with the purchase of a California book fair. Scholastic Book Fairs currently host more than 120,000 book sale events in partnership with schools across the country, giving more than 35 million students and their families access to thousands of affordable books and educational products. Throughout the 1990s, Scholastic continued to explode in popularity, publishing beloved kids series like Goosebumps, Captain Underpants, and in 1998, the American editions of the Harry Potter books. At that point, chances were, if there was a non-Disney franchise or property that you were obsessed with as a child, there was a decent chance that Scholastic had produced it. Which was why it was so exciting whenever your teacher announced that the Scholastic Book Fair was coming to your school. You now had the chance to dive into the magic magical world of fiction. You didn't just have to read what your teacher was going to test you on. Instead, you got the chance to seek out books for the pure joy of reading, the pure joy of imagination, all while you're still on the clock at school. For many kids, these days were magical, and for others, they were bittersweet. On March 12, 2021, Book Riot published an opinion piece called Let Me Ruin Your Childhood, The Inequality of Scholastic Book Fairs, written by Danica Ellis. As Ellis explains, 50 years ago, book fairs were a competitive business put on by a variety of companies and organizations. In 1981, Scholastic acquired California's school book fairs. By the 1990s, they had come out on top as the de facto school book fair provider. Now they host 120,000 fairs a year across the US and 11,000 across Canada, at least in years where there isn't a global pandemic. Most schools have these fairs as a fundraising initiative for their school library, and they're usually arranged by the school librarian or the PTA. This can be a great way to get new titles onto the library's shelves, but it's not without controversy. While school book fairs are often looked back on fondly by adult book lovers, they were a very different experience for those who grew up poor. School book fairs are a public display of disposable income. It's also a drawn-out process, from circling those items on the flyer, to asking your parents for money, to walking around the fair and looking at price tags, to seeing your peers show off their hauls. It's impossible to ignore if you aren't able to participate. Even for parents who are middle class, school book fairs can be a source of annoyance more than nostalgia. It is school-sponsored consumption, encouraging kids to beg their parents for money that will inevitably be spent on toys or an overpriced book with a Lego figure embedded on the cover. Many parents have protested against this marketing of toys and other non-book items during the Scholastic Book Fair. It's hard to imagine any other company that could get this same placement in schools, with catalogs passed out in class and perused during instructional time, not to mention a store placed inside of the building. Now, a few years ago, back before the COVID pandemic Fire Nation attacked, I used to work at a lovely store in Chicago called Open Books. There I taught creative writing workshops for groups of kids. Here's how it worked. Our location was half classrooms, half bookstore. The majority of books in the store were used books that we got from donations. Schools would set up a field trip for their students to come in for a creative writing workshop where we might teach them everything from slam poetry performance to how to use adjectives to build a brilliant new setting that they just dreamed up in their imagination. And then after the kids finished the writing workshop and had written a piece of their own, they'd get to pick out one book from our bookshop to take home with them. I loved this job so much. I thought it was an amazing system. Every kid gets exactly one book for free. Their parents' income doesn't factor in at all here. Every kid gets one book. One look! Meaning they can't get some Legos or something instead. And by the way, I have nothing against Legos. I just finished building a giant Lego DeLorean to add to my shelf of Back to the Future collectible models. I love toys, if you couldn't tell from this, but I think it's odd to put on a festival that celebrates literature and then have the low-income kids leaving with no literature and the high-income kids leaving with Legos and also no literature. So I loved this system of every kid gets one free book because kids will get to choose what book they wanted. You like graphic novels? You're sick of reading The Old Man and the Sea for the millionth time? Get that graphic novel, Gary. If comic art helps foster your love of reading, then consume as much of it as you want. Develop your love of reading however works for you. But unfortunately, programs like this aren't that common. Instead, we have to rely on paid transactions with big companies. Now, I don't hate the Scholastic Book Fair. Like many of you, I have a lot of really fond memories of it, especially from the years of my childhood when I wasn't poor. And I also think that a big event celebrating reading in general is a good thing. Yeah, we love the library, but the library doesn't always have every book you want, and sometimes you want to keep a beloved book in your home forever. And especially now in 2023, when demons like Ron DeSantis want to police what can and can't be in our school libraries, it's great that kids are going to have another way to access stories about a variety of human experiences. Oh wait, what's that? Scholastic caved to the likes of Ron DeSatan? I'm shocked. The 2023 diversity controversy. At the start of the 2023 school year, some rumors began circulating about Scholastic's creative categorization of books during its upcoming book fairs. Those rumors led to speculation like we see on this Reddit post from September 21st entitled, Scholastic Books offers bigotry button for school book fairs. User Mayspawned, who posted on the subreddit r/books, said the following. I just saw that Scholastic Book Fairs put all of their, quote, diverse books into a single book fair case and have given school libraries the option to exclude those books from a school's book fair. This seems like they are capitulating to ultra-conservative groups that want to ban books about immigrants or racial, neurologic, or family diversity. My school's librarian was upset that Scholastic has effectively created a bigot button to exclude these beautiful, inclusive books because some conservative districts don't want their kids to see them. This has her so upset she is contemplating ending the school's long relationship with Scholastic. Many of these books are award winners by award-winning authors. Examples include Res Dogs, about a girl who's visiting her grandparents' reservation when COVID lockdowns required her to extend her visit. Alma and How She she got her name, a Caldecott honor book about the origins of a Latina girl's name, and many more that are listed there. Now, the comments on this post were mixed. Some people were agreeing that this looked like forceful segregation and that Scholastic was being shady by caving to the demands of those wanting prejudiced book bans in our schools. Other people, however, said that they hadn't seen any sources that this was an actual concerted effort by Scholastic and that they'd wait for an official statement before speculating further. Now, shortly after, Scholastic actually released a statement which all but confirmed these rumors. In the second week of October 2023, Scholastic posted the following statement to their website. Scholastic provides diverse titles to every book fair. There have been a number of misconceptions that we want to clarify about how we have created a path to host Scholastic book fairs, even as schools and educators in the U.S. navigate restrictions imposed on them by state legislation and local policy. The biggest misconception is that Scholastic book fairs is putting all diverse titles into one optional case. That's not true in any school in any location we serve. There is now enacted or pending legislation in more than 30 U.S. states prohibiting certain kinds of books from being in schools, mostly LGBTQIA+ titles and books that engage with the presence of racism in our country. Because Scholastic book fairs are invited into schools, books can be purchased by kids on their own, these laws create an almost impossible dilemma: back away from these titles or risk making teachers, librarians, and volunteers vulnerable to being fired, sued, or prosecuted. To continue offering these books, as well as even more high-interest titles, we created an additional collection called Share Every Story, Celebrate Every Voice for our U.S. elementary school fairs. We cannot make a decision for our school partners around what risks they are willing to take based on the state and local laws that apply to their district, so these topics in this collection have been part of many planning calls that happen in advance of shipping a fair. We don't pretend that the solution is perfect, but the other option would be not to offer these books at all, which is not something we'd consider. There is a wide range of diverse titles throughout every book fair for every age level, and we continue to offer diverse books throughout our middle school fairs, which remain unchanged. All children need to see themselves in stories, and it is extremely unsettling to consider a world in which they don't. Scholastic's commitment remains unshakable to publish and distribute stories representative of all voices. Well, if there's one thing a book company is going to be good at, it's going to be pumping out a lot of words. And in this case, that's a lot of words to say basically nothing. Also, I love that false dichotomy. This situation isn't perfect, we know that, but our only other option is not offering these books at all. No, you also have a secret third option.
Secret? What secret?
Your other option is to do things like you were doing it before. And if a school is under specific legislation, that school can figure that out. You can leave that to them. You don't actually have to get involved in this.
Nobody asked you, Suze.
But all of that aside, what are the books in this collection? What books is Scholastic separating out of fear of educators facing potential legal repercussions of selling those books at their schools? I'm guessing they'd have to be either A, books that have already been voted on by school boards, or B, books that contain explicit graphic violence or sexual material. That's the only way I can see this making any sort of sense. So, what are the books included? Well, we have You Are Enough, a book about inclusion. Inclusion? I bet this book is all about being inclusive of all those communists who want to tear this great country apart. You are enough? I am enough what? Is it telling me that I'm enough in some kind of Harrison Bergeron illusion? A cap on how far I should be able to hoist myself up by my bootstraps? I'm enough, so if I make any more money, I have to pay it into social welfare programs, more like. That's definitely the kind of inclusion this book is talking about, right? This inclusive and empowering picture book from Sophia Sanchez, an 11-year-old model and actress with Down syndrome, reminds readers how important it is to embrace your differences, be confident, and be proud of who you are. Imagine all the wonderful things you can do if you don't let anyone stop you. You are enough just how you are. Sophia is unique, but her message is universal. We all belong. So each spread features beautiful full-color illustrations of a full cast of kid characters with all kinds of backgrounds, experiences, and abilities. Wait, you're telling me that this is a book about a girl with Down syndrome talking about her self-confidence and encouraging others to have confidence as well? Where's the controversy? In this optional diversity collection, along with this book, is its sequel, You Are Loved, a book about families. Families? Well, since this book might be inappropriate and dangerous in some states, I can only assume that they mean families in the Charles Manson sense. Since this book clearly must contain graphic violence of some sort, let's see what it's about. Families come in many different shapes and forms, but they all teach you how to be strong and show you how loved you are. Alongside a sweet and simple narrative, the warm illustrations tell their own story. Beginning with Sophia Sanchez's adopted family, readers will meet families with 2 moms and 2 dads, families with single parents, and kids raised by grandparents, guardians, or older siblings. Big families, small families, extended families, blended families, and mixed-raced families, including parents with their own differences that make them unique too. Oh, so you just meant it was literally about families? Are we really going to try to make the argument that some kids' families are inappropriate? Because let me tell you, when I was in elementary school, I had a single mom, and I often stayed with my grandma when my mom had to work too much, and the Scholastic Book Fair was already stressful enough, okay? The collection of optional books also includes I Am Ruby Bridges, written by, you guessed it, Ruby Bridges, who was a big part of the civil rights movement in the year 1960 by being the first Black child to integrate into a previously all-white school back when she was just 6 years old. Here is the synopsis. When Ruby Bridges was 6 years old, she became the first Black child to integrate the all-white William Frantz Elementary in Louisiana. Based on the pivotal events that happened in 1960 and told from her point of view, this is a poetic reflection on her experience that changed the face of history and the trajectory of the civil rights movement. I Am Ruby Bridges offers hope and confidence to all children. It is the perfect learning tool for schools and libraries to teach the story of Ruby Bridges and introduce this landmark story to young readers in a powerful new way. Oh God, no! Not a book about U.S. history! U.S. history in my American schools? What are they going to teach us next? Math? Now, I could go on with more and more examples, but you're probably noticing a pattern at this point, and that's that books deemed controversial, that might be too risky for an educator to sell lest they face backlash, they're all books about people who are just not straight, white, able-bodied boys.
We are the mailmen.
A book about having a disability is now political. A book telling the real story of American history is now political and controversial because I guess facts are the same as attacks.
Ooh, that was a good one.
A story that dares to mention that some kids might be adopted or might have parents of the same gender or might live with grandparents. Well, that's inappropriate because gay people are inappropriate by nature of not being straight like God intended, and kids who live with someone other than their biological parents are probably poor, and learning about poor people is scary. And a lot of people, including librarians, educators, parents, and authors themselves have been very, very angry about this decision. As the Mary Sue reported on October 12th, while claiming its book fairs are supposed to open kids to new ideas and give them the freedom to choose what they want to read, Scholastic is simultaneously censoring diverse books from schools. Several librarians reiterated that they were explicitly asked if they wanted a case with diverse books at their school's book fairs. The major publisher separated a significant portion of its diverse books from the rest of its book fair collection and put them in their own case. Meanwhile, a single librarian or school official would be given the authority to decide for the whole school if they wanted this case or not. If not, children who are BIPOC, LGBTQ+, refugees, immigrants, come from blended families, or have disabilities will most likely not see themselves reflected in the books available at their book fair. Parents and authors have begun coming forward with further allegations that show just how far Scholastic is going to hide its diverse books and aid in book censorship. Haley Piper, an award-winning horror author, shared on Blue Sky Social an image of the warning notes that librarians and school officials get even after they request the diverse book case. The case in question is called Share Every Story, Celebrate Every Voice. Meanwhile, the case comes with a note telling schools they are receiving it because it was, quote, requested. It goes on to assure the receiver that if the case was sent mistakenly, it can just be set aside until pickup day, and urges them to contact their fair consultant if they have any concerns about receiving diverse books. An anonymous PTA leader contacted the Mary Sue, revealing that the books in the Share Every Story case also aren't listed in book fair catalogs sent to parents, even when schools request the case. There's another element to this as well, one that we're about to dive into a lot more deeply. While Scholastic can wax poetic all day long about concerns regarding educators having to make tough decisions, at the end of the day, Scholastic is a business, and a business always has the incentive to make money. And keep in mind that Scholastic is not a small business by any means. They're a big company with the necessary resources to take a stand even when it's risky. On his website Popular Information, journalist Judd Legum says the following: Scholastic, the popular publisher of children's books, is a big business. It is a publicly traded company with a market capitalization of $1.15 billion. Its CEO, Peter Warwick, collected a total compensation of $3,300,361 in 2023, and at least 4 other executives were paid over $1.3 million. But this year, facing pressure from right-wing ideologues, Scholastic is facilitating the exclusion of books that feature people of color and or LGBTQ characters. So what does this all mean? Scholastic's shady competitors. The issue is that, once again, this comes down to, get ready for it, drum roll please, a commentary on capitalism. What if I told you that, much like how many right-wing politicians are pushing homeschooling and private schools not because they have true moral issues with public school, but rather because it's profitable to privatize every industry, that the same sort of thing's actually happening here. If Scholastic bends their will to the most vile people in government, they can ensure that they still get their money. But it's not just that. If those same vile people in government can make laws excluding books like the ones published by Scholastic from their schools, they can bring in their own companies, the competitors, and they can be the ones to profit instead. I'm serious. We've already covered how Scholastic is behaving in these fairs, using public school libraries, a government-funded resource, to set up for-profit bookstore kiosks in schools where kids must pay for the books that they want. And if the kids don't want books, they can pay for other stuff, like Chuck E. Cheese Pride-grade plastic that'll melt between your leather car seats within the next year. It's already a bit sus to tie in Scholastic book fairs with public education. We know that this is a business venture above all, and in my opinion, that is why so many conservative people want to push them out. Not because of the book's content, but because they run competitor companies.
Maybe this George Washington will make it come here faster.
In recent years, I've covered two major companies that are trying to act as main competitors to the Scholastic Book Fair, and they're by far worse as companies. Those companies are 1, a publisher solely of books written by right-wing influencers, and 2, a multi-level marketing company, or MLM, what we may colloquially but unofficially refer to as a pyramid scheme. So let's dive into Scholastic's shady competitors. First up, Brave Books. I have covered Brave Books on this channel many times before, and it seems that despite the poor quality of their books, they're continuing to hold their own in the town square battle of the marketplace of ideas and literature. For some background, Brave Books is a company that publishes children's books written by far right-wing influencers and political talking heads. I've done a video on the company as a whole, plus I've reviewed their books written by Kirk Cameron, Kevin Sorbo, Steven Crowder, and Libs of TikTok. In addition to books by right-wing celebrities, the company also publishes titles with conservative dog whistles in the titles, things like Paws Off My Cannon, a book about letting all of us have guns, which is definitely a great idea to be planting in the heads of little children. Now, notice I didn't call for the banning of Paws Off My Cannon, I just said I think it sounds bad. There's a difference. But in their efforts to become relevant in the free market, Brave Books has strategically started a campaign to publicly demonize Scholastic as a company, portraying them as woke ideologues who want to indoctrinate your kids, all in an effort to steal Scholastic's customers for themselves. You know what they say, all's fair in love and capitalism. Brave Books has gone so far in trying to squash their children's book competitor Scholastic that they've started a website called StopScholastic.com, which greets you with the homepage about the dangerous truth behind Scholastic and how you can fight back. And here's what's fun. If you type in StopScholastic.com into your internet browser, it will immediately redirect you to the page bravebooks.us/pages/bravebookfairs. Yes, Brave Books is putting on their own book fair, and that's why they want Scholastic on. Here's what the homepage says. You may be thinking that Scholastic is a huge company and some bad books just slip through the cracks. Seems reasonable, but that's not the case. Scholastic is not the company you knew as a child. Just like Disney, Target, and Bud Light, Scholastic has succumbed to an agenda that has led them to flood our schools and libraries with books that promote dangerous anti-biblical ideas. I'm sorry, can we take a moment and just laugh about that for a second? Just like Disney, Target, and Bud Light, Scholastic has succumbed to an agenda that has led them to flood our schools and libraries. My brother in Christ, my brother in biblical Christian ideals in our school children's books, Bud Light is not flooding our libraries.
I need 2 more beers.
And if Bud Light were flooding our libraries, that's because you need to get your school's piping systems checked, and that's why we need building codes, and that's why the government needs to regulate construction. Checkmate libertarians, checkmate Dave Rubin.
I think it's the government that they're like, the government gave me this regulation, so that's why I'm going to do it right.
Well, if they didn't have any regulations, there'd be no incentive whatsoever to do it right.
If we let the free market reign supreme, if we separate business and state, then construction companies can flood your school's pipes with gay beer from Bud Light, and there's nothing you can do about it other than leave them a bad review on Yelp. That's the free market, baby! In all seriousness, I know that this page was trying to say that Bud Light is supporting the LGBTQ community, and they don't like that, just like how they don't like Scholastic supporting the LGBTQ community. And I've got to say, Brave Books has this capitalism thing down to a science, because right after all their fear-mongering about how the children's book publishers and beer companies are simultaneously coming to suck the Christ out of Christmas, leaving just mess, of course we lead directly into a sales pitch. As the website says, it's time to cancel Scholastic. If you are a principal, librarian, or school board member, it's time to take a stand. If you are wondering how to replace books and book fairs that Scholastic provided, we've got a solution. Hold up, can we just mention that the anti-cancel culture crowd says it's time to cancel Scholastic as their first thing? Thought we didn't believe in canceling, but okay. Brave Book Fairs! Our mission is to offer schools a catalog with children's books that are engaging and age-appropriate without all the junk. We've heard from librarians and parents who are fed up with sifting through hundreds of books that come in from Scholastic. We eliminate that headache for you by pre-screening all of our books to ensure that children aren't exposed to adult content that is masked as a harmless children's book. We also provide transparency with our screening criteria. That's not all, though. At Brave, we're taking book fairs to the next level by offering an immersive experience that will bring book characters to life and spark your students' imagination. Students will leave our fairs actually wanting to read. Brave Book Fairs promise to protect and foster children's innocence, which gives kids the freedom to just be kids. I love when I have the freedom to just be a kid. Freedom means having God shoved down my throat at every turn, right? And to be clear, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be Christian children's books. There should. VeggieTales was pretty based, if I do say so myself. I'm saying that it's awfully self-centered to claim that your books don't have a message and leave them free to be kids just because it's a message that you personally agree with. If Christian books don't have an agenda by nature of being Christian, then LGBTQ books also don't have an agenda just by nature of being LGBTQ books either.
You make very compelling argument.
So yes, Brave Books is actively trying to get books they don't like silenced so that they can take Scholastic's clients. It's all about money. Usborne and Paper Pie. Now there's another company that hosts book fairs that many people, especially those who grew up in Canada or the UK as opposed to the US, may remember being on the same level as the Scholastic Book Fair, and that is Usborne Books and the Usborne Book Fair. Usborne Books has hosted their own Usborne Book Fairs for decades, but what a lot of people don't know is that Usborne Books is, get ready for it, drum roll, a multi-level marketing company. That's right, they're an MLM that you can buy into and host book parties at your house the way that Karen down the block hosts Mary Kay parties, and you too can lose money while those at the top of the pyramid profit. I've done like 3 or 4 videos on this channel about Usborne Books at this point and about how shady their business practices are. Now in 2022, Usborne Books rebranded to Paper Pie, which I also did a video on, but even with the new name, Paper Pie is still doing the exact same MLM practices, and they're still hosting book fairs, including in the US. Fun, easy, and hassle-free. We understand the needs and challenges faced by organizations trying to raise funds, so we've designed a program to make it easy for you to reach your fundraising goals. Your school or organization receives up to 50% in free books and learning resources. Free books! Up to 50% of retail sales and free books and learning resources. Books and Cash provides the host school with free books, learning resources, and cash for the library. Cash only. Fund special projects, teacher resources, or extras for your students. Sounds great, right? Yeah, instead of having Scholastic, a company with paid employees who are entitled to salaries and benefits running the fair, let's have down on their luck single moms who bought into an MLM as a last resort before filing for unemployment. Let's have them run the fair and maybe get paid for their labor, but probably not since it's actually going to their upline. They're the one getting paid.
To talk.
Basically, what I'm saying here is, I don't have the solution. I think Scholastic's in a really tough spot right now, but caving to the pressure, in my opinion, is not the answer. At the same time, I do think Scholastic needs some legitimate competition, but not from a shady MLM company or a conservative propaganda machine masquerading as a publisher, but from, I don't know, maybe just like other regular book publishers, maybe a book fair company that sells books from multiple different publishers and curates them. Maybe we just need more book fair companies in general to shake it up. I don't know. What I do know, though, is that at the end of the day, this is the fault of people creating a moral panic and outrage over the content of books that their kids might access. And even more so, it's the fault of governments encouraging, supporting, and even profiting from that moral panic. As Publishers Weekly reported on October 17th, this issue is bigger than just these companies. It comes down to the restrictive actions taken by the US government. As the article reports, meanwhile, in a statement, PEN America urged Scholastic to explore other solutions to help local librarians and school officials cope with the pressures of nefarious new laws and local pressures. To be clear, it is essential to lay blame on the legislators and activists who are putting Scholastic and other publishers in an impossible bind when it comes to the distribution of a diverse range of books, the PEN statement reads, noting that the climate of fear taking hold in schools and libraries, but sequestering Fostering books on these topics risks depriving students and families of books that speak to them. It will deny them the opportunity for all students to encounter diverse stories that increase empathy, understanding, and reflect the range of human experiences and identities, which are essential underpinnings of a pluralistic democratic society. Also on October 17th, NPR released their own article about this entire controversy, also explaining that at the core, book bans are the issue. As NPR reports, the movement to restrict books is driven by a vocal minority demanding censorship, says the free speech group PEN America, which said it found 3,362 cases of book bans in the 2022-23 school year, up from 2,532 bans in the 2021-22 school year. The group defines a ban as any move that restricts access to a book. A majority of Americans oppose book restrictions, according to an NPR and Ipsos poll. It says that such bans in schools and libraries are most prevalent in Texas, Florida, Missouri, Utah, and South Carolina, but are being modeled and replicated across the country. Many districts are still figuring out what new book bans mean for their classrooms and libraries. The wording of these laws themselves and the resulting legal back and forth have created a lot of confusion, as is the case in Texas, where one of those new laws temporarily takes effect this month after an appeals court blocked a judge's injunction against it. A 5th grade teacher in Georgia was fired earlier this year for reading out loud from a book addressing gender stereotypes, which she said was chosen from the Scholastic Book Fair. She appealed her termination to the State Board of Education last month. A middle school teacher in Texas was fired for assigning her class an illustrated adaptation of Anne Frank's diary. Other librarians and educators across the country have faced harassment, threats, and termination in the face of book bans, anti-critical race theory protests, and other culture war issues. Some had started to censor themselves, while others have resigned altogether. Like I've said in other videos before, this really seems to be part of an effort to undermine public schooling as an institution, which is really scary. As companies like Brave Books show us, the bottom line is always profit. If schools can be privatized, hey, that's great news for corporations. Now all we have to do is make parents live in fear of public schools, live in fear of book publishers, and then offer alternatives that they're not afraid of. It's so manipulative that it's sickening. But I'm also really disappointed in Scholastic here. Yeah, they were put in a tough spot, but they also have the resources to fight back, and they chose instead to cave to the pressure, leaving the speaking out to the teachers, librarians, and independent content creators, the journalists, the individuals who have a lot less financial and social capital than they do, who have a lot more to lose if they piss off the wrong person. Now, as I was sitting down to film this video, like 1 hour before I started filming, an update came out when NPR reported the following. Scholastic is reversing course, saying it will no longer separate diverse stories for school book fairs after weeks of mounting backlash from educators and authors. Ellie Berger, the president of Scholastic Trade Publishing, apologized and announced the change in a letter Tuesday addressed to authors and illustrators, a copy of which was obtained by NPR. Berger said the controversial collection, called Share Every Story, Celebrate Every Voice, will be discontinued starting in January. Book fairs are already underway for this fall, but also take place in the spring. She said the company is actively working on a pivot plan for the remaining fall fairs. We will find an alternate way to get a greater range of books into the hands of children, Berger wrote, before reaffirming the company's commitment to BIPOC and LGBTQIA+ authors and stories. We pledge to stand with you as we redouble our efforts to combat the laws restricting children's access to books. PEN America, the nonprofit organization that supports free speech, acknowledged Scholastic's dilemma and applauded its decision to pivot. Scholastic recognized that, as difficult as a bind as this pernicious legislation created, the right answer was not to become an accessory to censorship, Jonathan Friedman, the director of its free expression and education program, said in a statement. Scholastic is an essential source of knowledge and a delight for countless children. We are glad to see them champion the freedom to read. So all in all, for now, as of at the time I'm filming this, it looks like this story could have a happy ending, but it was wild to follow that controversy in the first place, and I'm really grateful for all of the teachers, journalists, authors, book publisher, competitors, everyone, not Brave Books, but everyone who spoke out, talking about the importance of kids being able to have diverse books and talking about how much they didn't approve of Scholastic's decision in this particular case. I'm curious to know all of your guys' thoughts on this situation in the comments below, how you think people should be navigating these situations, what you think that we as individual people can do to help, all of that kind of stuff. I am interested in it. Let me know all about your thoughts in the comments below. But until then, I will see you guys next week for more videos. In the meantime, buy books written by LGBTQ authors, buy books that accurately portray US history, support authors, support local bookstores, and have a fantastic start to your day. Bye!
Get you some nuts.
Yeah, you effin'.
Up yours, woke moralist. We'll see who cancels who.